The Tale of Paul Bunyan by Laurie Haskins Huron, illustrated by Luke Flowers. Long ago, the pine trees in Maine grew so tall their tops jabbed holes in the sky. Paul Bunyan was born among those mighty pines. He was such a big baby, his parents had to use a wagon for a carriage. When he cried, his tears made puddles for the size of ponds. Paul's first sneeze blew a flock of ducks south, smack in the middle of summer. By the time he turned 18, Paul stood 13 axe handles high, and he was growing an inch a day. Soon he left home to join the logging crew. All winter, Paul and the other lumberjacks chopped down trees. Paul worked faster than the rest of the men put together. He could fell a dozen pines with a single blow. It wasn't long before he became the boss of the crew. Paul's first command was to the camp cook. "More pea soup," he thundered. Paul was always hungry, and pea soup was his favorite. The cook hitched up the camp wagon. He drove right across the frozen lake to the nearest town and loaded up on peas. But on the way back to camp, the wagon plunged through the ice. Paul scratched his enormous chin. "No problem," he said. He poured a barrel of salt into the lake, then a barrel of pepper. He told his men to make a ring of logs around the edge. Paul set the logs on fire. Soon the whole lake was boiling. The fine smell of pea soup filled the air. "Dinner!" he hollered. Winter was always cold in Maine. That year it was so cold it snowed blue for 10 days. Paul was deep in the woods when he heard a whimper. It was a baby ox, shivering under a tree. The ox's white coat had turned bright blue from the snow. "Come here, little babe," said Paul. He scooped up the ox and carried him back to camp. Paul fed the ox a bowl of pea soup. Then he put the ox to bed in the stable. That night, the ox began to grow and grow. The next morning, the baby ox was gone. So was the stable. Paul found the ox standing in the pea soup lake, licking the bottom dry. The stable was perched on his back like a turtle shell. "Well, didn't you grow up fast?" said Paul. "But I'm still going to call you Babe." Babe went to work with Paul and his crew. The first thing he did was help Paul fix the logging row. It was awfully twisty. Paul tied one end of the road to Babe's horns. Then, with one good tug, Babe straightened that road right out. The days kept getting colder. Raccoons stole the coats off of sleeping bears. Fish grew fur over their gills. And one morning, the lumberjacks' words froze solid in midair. "Hello! Hello!" they cried. But they couldn't hear a thing, not till spring when the words finally thawed out. The river thawed too. Babe helped Paul's crew push the logs into the river. "Ride these logs down the river. Don't stop till you reach the nearest sawmill," Paul told 10 of his men. Then he and Babe headed west with the rest of the crew. Turns out that river didn't lead to a small sawmill. It didn't lead to anything at all. It was the Round River, and it flowed around and around in a big circle. Paul's men didn't know what to do, so they just kept right on riding the logs. 20 years later, Paul passed the same spot. There were his men with long white beards still floating along the river. The water had worn the logs down to slender sticks. "Might as well put those sticks to good use," said Paul. He made the sticks turn into fishing poles, and his men caught the last of the furry fish from the Round River. This is why you almost never see fish with fur anymore. Paul and Babe crisscrossed the country, logging forests from Maine to California and back again. They made some important stops along the way. In Oregon, Paul put out a campfire by piling rocks on it. That's how Mount Hood came to be. Across Minnesota, Paul's and Babe's footprints filled with rain. Those prints became Minnesota's famous 10,000 lakes. And on the way through Arizona, Paul dragged his axe along the ground and carved out the Grand Canyon. Lumberjacks came and went, but none left their mark like the great Paul Bunyan. Logging legend. Paul Bunyan wasn't a real person. He was invented by lumberjacks who liked to tell each other wild tales. The tales got taller and taller over time, much like Paul himself. Folks in Maine swear he was created there, but other states lay claim to him too. You can find statues of Paul Bunyan in Maine, Michigan, Minnesota, Indiana, Wisconsin, Oregon, and California. Hi everyone, so this is Miss Maureen, and this week we have read about Paul Bunyan and Babe. Including in your storytime packet this week, you'll find a coloring page of Paul Bunyan and Babe, my Itsy Bitsy O book, which on the inside has all these neat little things, but there's an O for ox and an ostrich, so you'll have fun coloring that as well. And then you will have your 2 pages to cut out, Paul Bunyan and Babe. And I'm going to show you real quick like how to put them together. So I have my craft tube, which is actually a paper towel tube that I have cut in half. So here are your 2 pieces. And now we're going to put together Paul Bunyan. As you can see, we have his shirt and pants, his suspenders, his arms, of course his head and his hat and his axe, and his 2 boots. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to glue the suspenders on his pants. Now that I have that glued on, I'm going to put glue on the back of his shirt and pants, and we're going to glue them to the toilet paper tube. I said toilet paper tube, it's actually a paper towel tube. So it's going to go around like this. There's his little suspenders and his pants. Gotta make his shirt more secure down here. Then I'm going to get a boot. Get his other boot. Is that a left boot and a right boot? I don't think it really matters. Then we're going to put on an arm. Arm here on the side. I'm going to glue down his suspenders. Glue on the back of another arm.
You like?
Mm-hmm. Glue on the back of his head.
Okay. Washington's.
Glue on the back of his hat. Now, where do we think we need to put the axe? Right here in his hand? So it's off to the side? Yeah, well, so I'm going to put glue on his hand. And there you have Paul Bunyan. Slide his arm down a little bit. It's going to chop his head off. There you go. And there is your Paul Bunyan. Now to do Babe. And here I have Babe. Her blue body, her head, her left and right front hooves, her left and right back hooves, and her tail. So the first thing I'm going to do is put glue on her blue belly. I've got glue on here. I'm going to wrap it around the tube, paper towel tube. Make sure it's good and secure, like so. And put glue right down here on the bottom of her head, right here on her little snout. So she looks like this. And put glue on one hoof. Now her legs are going to stick straight out when you put them on the side. So that looks like this. Put that hoof and leg on this side, like so.
Hi, this is Shalina. Is Brian helping you? Okay, what was he looking for?
And let's put leg on that side.
Hold on 1 second, okay? I'm sorry about that.
And another leg on this side. Then you have her tail. We're going to put glue on one side of her tail so you can fold it in half. So it'll stick. This little flap right here, you're going to put glue on it. Stick it right underneath that flap. And there's her tail. Oh, and it's stuck to my fingers. There we go. Make sure it's good and secure in there. So now you have Babe and you have Paul. Hope you enjoyed the book and the craft. See you soon.